Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
This is Hannah from Hall Beer Specialists in the Great Western Arcade in Birmingham, and we're the proud sponsors of Daftaboutcraft.
Welcome along to episode number 39 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast. An episode with a difference, with me, Dave D.
And me, Dave B.
And thanks for taking the time to stream and download this episode. We had a special a few weeks ago, and we've got, well, it's sort of another special this time, Dave, isn't it?
Yes, we're starting the year with a Brew To Me special. Now, Brew To Me is probably my favourite part of the podcast. And then when we put it out to the wider public, the reaction we got to actually finding more breweries that we hadn't heard of was brilliant.
Yeah, this is the feature, in case you haven't heard it, where we try a beer from a brewery we haven't come across before or have never tried, and we put it out there. In fact, Dave put a message out on Instagram asking for who you think we should focus on, and we were literally inundated with people suggesting breweries one after the other. It was probably the most response we've ever got to a post on the socials, Dave.
Definitely, and it just showed the appetite for people wanting to highlight breweries that are local to them, which they like and want to spread the word, which is in a sense what craft beer is all about. There were a few that we had heard of and we had sampled, but for each one that we had, there probably was one that we hadn't as well. It was a really good...
Yeah, so this is probably something we can go back to again at some point in a few months' time and do again.
Yeah, I think so. As long as people like this one that we're about to do, then yeah, I think we should do more. Everyone that we've got involved, as the listeners will find out, has been really excited about doing it as well.
Exactly, because we're not just sampling a beer each year. We've got 3 beers each, so 6 beers, but we've also got somebody from each brewery to come on and talk to you as well. So it's really exciting. I wonder if we should try and do this episode unedited, Dave, like our cheese and beer, because people were saying they loved it.
Well, we'll just have to see how we go. But yes, people did really like that, the sort of more chatty style. I mean, I don't think we're sort of come across all stilted normally, but
no,
apparently if we just sat there and chat and eat cheese and drink this,
it's great.
Really
People
like
love it. Yeah. So no more editing for me from now on. Well, we can just crack on then, can't we? I think, Dave.
Yes, I think first of all we'll hand over to the first brewery that I've got, and they can introduce themselves, and then we'll talk about the beer because it's a nice little introduction.
Hi, I'm David.
And I'm Dale.
And we're from Deadweight Brewing Co. We're a nano brewery based in the Midlands, in Warwickshire. We've been brewing since 2019. Essentially, the brewery started as too many drinks in the pub. We thought, let's give this a crack. Surely we can make beer. We made quite a few bad beers, and then they started getting good. And we thought, hey, let's try and make this a full-time job. So in November 2022, we launched our website. Dale's going to tell you about our launch beers now.
So we launched with 5 different beers: an Imperial Stout, a Baltic Porter, a double IPA, a Session Pale Ale, and a Pilsner, which was a nice range for us to start with. Since then, we've brewed a few more beers, so we've got a Hefeweizen, a West Coast IPA, and a New England Pale Ale as well. I think the chaps from Daftaboutcraft have ordered our Pale Box, so they've got some of our favourite beers, which include our Hefeweizen called Crow's Nest, and our New England Pale called Ajax, but we really are looking forward to hearing what they think about our Session Pale Ale, which is called Dinghy.
Which is weirdly named after the film Four Lions. We don't know why.
Dinghy's a small boat, so, you know, it's all nautical themed.
But also, rubber dicking rapids, mate. I hope you enjoy the beers, guys, and let us know what you think. Cheers!
Now, have you watched the film Four Lions then?
I'm terrible with films, and I could never remember film names, and there's so many films I have never watched that I should have watched, so I'm going to say no.
Okay, well, for those who get the rubber dinghy rapids reference, they will hopefully be laughing like I was. I expected, because they're deadweight, they've got an anchor and all the other nautical references. I assumed dinghy was just a nautical reference, but apparently there is a bit more to it, so they're obviously fans of the Four Lions film as well.
Okay, got you.
Anyway, what I am presented with here is Dinghy, which is a 4.3% Session Pale Ale. I really wanted to try the Hefeweizen, which I mentioned. I have got it. However, the hops in this, 1 hop.
Oh.
Can you guess it? I'll give you a hint. It's not one of the big 3.
Okay. Is it El Dorado?
No. I think we've both warmed up to it over time.
Is it Sabro?
No, because I still haven't warmed up to Sabro.
Okay. What is it, Dave?
It's Galaxy.
Oh, okay. Of course, yeah. The divisive Galaxy.
which I don't associate with a session pale whatsoever. And I also don't associate this nose with Galaxy. This could easily be Mosaic and Amarillo.
Okay.
Something like that. It's quite fruity and it smells quite soft, if that makes sense.
So this isn't Galaxy as we've often experienced it before then?
No, you can probably see it on there. I think my camera doesn't quite do that justice. It's a little bit darker than what you see in there. It's definitely more orangey. Tastes like Galaxy. Nice and full, bitter but not dank, but also not OTT, but you can tell it's Galaxy once you get into it.
But when we first had a beer with Galaxy, we were like, whoa, that's too much, we don't like it. But gradually over time, do you think it's because we've got used to drinking more beers with Galaxy, or do you think brewers have become more adept at dealing with the hop?
I reckon a bit from column A and a bit from column B.
Yeah, it could be.
I think if you expose people to something enough, they'll become a bit more used to it. And I reckon, as we've found when we've either revisited breweries or we've revisited beers, there's always that sort of constant tinkering and aim for perfection that a lot of brewers go for. So I reckon they're always trying to push and work out what works and what doesn't with hops. And I think perhaps that's happened with Galaxy.
What else have these guys done?
I got the Pales box, which had 5 pales in there. I've got the Session Pale, there's a Pilsner, I want to say there's a New England IPA in there, possibly a West Coast, and the Hefeweizen. But I know they also released an Imperial Stout when they started, as they said in their little note there. So they do cater to all the ranges, and on their web shop, there is plenty on there to choose from, and it is really reasonably priced. I think I got my 5 cans for 22, 24, something like that. I can't remember if that included postage or not, but it wasn't outrageous at all.
It's really great to shine a light on breweries we don't know much about. You know, not all these breweries will aspire to be being the next Verdants and Cloudwaters, and they're quite happy in their own little domain, selling beer to their local area and making a go of it. Absolutely.
I'm just reading a little bit more about the guys. So they started in 2019, which I think they said as well. Now, they said in the West Midlands, they didn't actually say Nuneaton. That's not a million miles from yourself.
No, it's not, no.
And all the nautical theme inspired by our family's naval heritage.
Right, okay.
So there is a link to it all. I really like this. I could easily have more of it. I could easily have it on keg. It's nice to have a pale that's not the usual Citra Mosaic or something like that. Now, admittedly, one of my other beers coming up is Citra Mosaic, but I have no problem with that, as you'll find out why anyway. But it's a very solid start for me.
Excellent. Well, you talk about Citra Mosaic. I'm going to go into my first beer while you're finishing that. And mine is from a brewery called Growling Gibbon. Ralph from the brewery will be along to talk to you in a few minutes, but I'm going to crack open my beer and pour it into my Growling Gibbon glass. Look at this, Dave.
Oh, he's got glassware.
Glassware.
Oh, you're going to be very happy now.
Very happy with that. So thanks very much to Growling Gibbon for sending that to me. Now, what I've got here is a New England IPA, 6.3%. Does have
big.
Yeah. It does have Mosaic and Citra, but also Eldorado, Centennial, and Willamette. Ever come across that one?
I don't think I do. Did you do a little bit of research into what you should expect from Willamette?
Well, the combination of these hops together should be giving me notes of peach, tangerine, and pineapple. Tell you what, that looks very nice in the glass.
Oh, that does look nice in the glass. It's the usual ice cream pour, but it does look good. It's a good head on it.
It is. Lots of tiny, tiny little bubbles. Looks beautiful in the glass. Let's try it. That's pretty good. A little bit of bitterness at the end I perhaps didn't expect. Peach, tangerine and pineapple. Stone fruit, yeah, that's the one they say, isn't it? Lots of stone fruit. I'm not sure I could actually say, yes, I can taste peach and all of that, but...
Can you taste pineapple? Because that can be quite distinctive. There are a couple of beers that have really... And, Polly's did that one that you can get in a supermarket where I think they use basically pineapple or pureed pineapple, and it really does taste a bit, or it used to. I haven't had it for a long time. Do you get pineapple there?
It's very difficult to pinpoint a particular fruit.
Taste of its ABV?
I think it does, yeah, it does. It does taste pretty hefty.
It's not a fair comparison, obviously, but when I think now of New England IPAs and stuff, like obviously most breweries do one or have done one, but probably the two that will consistently chuck out pales and New Englands now, I think, Daya and Pressure Drop. Would you blind taste test that and think, oh, it could be one of theirs, or is it distinctive?
When you have a Dea, you usually know it's a Dea, don't you? I'd have to have another one of these guys to see if they've got their own unique taste. With these New England IPAs, what you tend to find is that they should be a little bit sweeter and have less bitterness than a usual IPA, which is due to the higher hop oil content and the use of juicier hop strains. Slightly put off there, Dave's dog's just walked in, which is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, he's going to feature later in the podcast, sort of.
True.
But also, I wonder if he associated you with being in this room as maybe having some cheese like he did last time when he came in.
He does sleep in this room a little bit now of late. It's probably the fact that he wants to go to sleep and he's like, why are you still in this bedroom?
What were you doing in here? Just so he has never actually said what this beer was called. It's called Tune In, Freak Out. Now, that is eminently drinkable. I like that. I can't get over the colour. It's a really beautiful colour, like a mixture between orange squash and lemon squash, if you like. Let's go over to Ralph and he can tell you all about the brewery.
Hi, this is Ralph from Growling Gibbon Brew Co. Just want to tell you a bit about the brewery and a bit about the beers. So I was a home brewer for about 15 years prior to starting the brewery, which I started in late 2021, basically because I've been working in the tech industry, spending far too much time working at home on WebEx and really missed the connection with my fellow human beings. And I felt like beer was something that brought people together. I've been doing a lot more home brewing at that time as well. So I felt like the beers were getting to the point where they're actually really good. And so I set up the brewery and currently brewing out of a small unit in Hursley, which is just outside Winchester, on a 100-litre system. There's 2 fermenters there at the moment, and started actually selling beer in growlers to sort of the locals in, I think it was about March of 2022, so last year. Opened up to the trade in June with a sort of launch party at one of the local craft ale bars, and now selling to quite a lot of the local craft ale bars and a few restaurants and stuff as well in the area. But I started to realise kind of around September time that it was, just not sustainable to work on that capacity. I always knew that was never going to be a viable business. But yeah, felt like it was time that the demand was outstripping the supply. So started working with another brewery, renting some tank space over there, and that's Little Monster over in Lavant. So shout out to those guys. They've been amazing, really helpful, letting me go and brew there. And I've been kind of brewing about 1,000 litres a month over there of the 3 core beers, which you're going to try. And that also opened up the ability to put beer into cans, which I think is a really important part of the business. And yeah, right now where we're at is, that's even starting to get a bit challenging. And so looking at next steps, which will be getting a unit in Winchester, a decent sized unit, where I can accommodate a 12 barrel system, and start off with a couple of fermenters and move on from there. So that's kind of the plan at the moment. So hopefully that's what's in store this year. But sort of working on the plans for that at the moment. So watch this space. On to the beers then. So there are 3 cans today. Tune In Freak Out, which is the flagship New England IPA at 6.3%. That's a lovely beer with Centennial, Citra, Eldorado, Mosaic and Willamette hops. Sort of notes of peach, tangerine and pineapple in that one. So as I say, that's kind of the flagship beer, nice strong one. Then we've got Detective of Perspective, which has got Citra, Mosaic and Amarillo hops, and notes of citrus and pine. That one is really kind of it's a West Coast pale ale, but it's kind of an entry to the style, if you like, and almost an entry to craft beer. So whilst it's a West Coast, it is a very sort of baby West Coast, so not loads of bitterness. Something that people who might be lager drinkers or might be sort of just more classical pale ale drinkers might like to sort of get into some of the American styles. So that one's been really popular in the local area. And then finally, we've got Disconnect the Dots, which is just a lovely hazy pale ale. It's only 4.3%, so really nice, easy drinking beer. Plenty, you can have a good old session on that. That's hopped with Nelson, Simcoe, and Citra, so some beautiful hops in that. And you get kind of sweet fruit and melon on the nose with that. And good sort of all-out hazy, easy drinking beer.
Thanks so much there to Ralph from Grouding Gibbon. I think I was struggling a little bit with what to say about this beer because it goes down a treat. It's really easy to drink. And I think that's probably a testament to how well it's brewed, to be honest. Good job there, Grouding Gibbon. Right, Dave, what is your next beer and who is it from?
We're now on to Escapist Brew Co. Very much new. Right. So new, in fact, that while Steve has plenty of beer available in kegs, at the moment, he doesn't really have anything canned. He does some stuff canned, but as you can see from this handwritten label,
wow,
which is brilliant.
Look at that. So what we have here is a blank can with words stuck onto it, explaining what it is. So what is it? What have you got?
I've got Testing 1-2, which is, as Steve will explain, the first beer they brewed, and it went through a few iterations. Again, it's another session pale. This one is 4.6%. And it is Citra and Mosaic. I will now hand over to Steve. He can tell you a bit more, and then we'll come back to the bit.
Hey guys, my name's Steve Pottinger, and I am the co-owner of Escapist Brew Co. Thanks very much for offering to feature us in your podcast. Really looking forward to see what you think of the beers. So a little bit about us. We started as a micropub, a craft beer bar, which we still have, the Escapist in Chichester down in West Sussex. And then at the beginning of 2022, the opportunity to purchase a very small microbrewery came up. So it's a 300-litre kit. So we're sort of talking 8 kegs out of a brew, which is great when you've got your own bar. And then gradually we've sort of built and started selling out to a few other people, which is really exciting. We've managed to sort of spread ourselves from the other side of Portsmouth all the way through to sort of Worthing and nearly Brighton, and then we've a couple of places up in London, which is really exciting. So the 2 beers that you have there are Testing 1-2, which is our core range pale ale. So it's Citra Mosaic. It was our marker to see if we were actually any good at brewing beer in the first place. So we thought if you can get a Citra Mosaic pale right, then you're in for the win. And I think it took 3 brews. First one was too thin, too strong. Second one was good mouthfeel, still too strong. Third one was just right. And we're now into the 5th or 6th brew. I think the one you've got there is about the fifth brew. So very happy with that. Sold that out to a few places, which is really exciting. And then the other beer you've got there, solely because it was the only other thing I've got in can at the moment, is an IPA, 5.7%, Mosaic and Simcoe. There is a little bit of Citra in the dry hop as well, but comparative to the other 2, not so much. I think it's come out really nice. We're really pleased with that. A slightly stronger 5.7. Brewed it with a local friend of ours who's he's a surfer. He's got a little surf brand and he prints all our T-shirts. So we've got to know him really well. So we thought we'd do a little bit of a collab, and we're hoping to put the beer on in his shop and do a little sort of surf movie night, which will be really cool. So yeah, please let us know what you think. Really look forward to hearing, and hopefully we can get you down, or you can try some more of our beers in the future, because it's great. We've really sort of started spreading out a bit now. We've done a Hefeweizen, we're on to our second Kolsch, we've done a cold IPA, we've done a stout. We did a chocolate and spice pear stout for Christmas. So we are trying to, broaden our horizons and learn lots other than just doing classic hazy juicy bangers. But yeah, thanks again, and I look forward to hearing from you. Cheers.
So there goes Steve from Escapist.
Very nice of him to invite us down.
Absolutely. The amount of invites we've had to go and visit people, we need to take a whole summer off work, I think.
I'm so screwed for that. Got no chance now.
Right, so what do we have here then? What's that? You've just poured it into your glass, Dave. What's it look like?
Good head. Yeah, this is quite interesting, those for Citra and Mosaic. I get both. I weirdly almost get coffee. Now, that's a bit worrying for me, perhaps.
Haven't got COVID, have you?
Hope not.
Thing is, nobody's ever wrong with what you smell. You smell what you smell, don't you?
I think that's coming from the mosaic, actually, because now I've tasted it. It is well balanced. I'd actually say it's more a mosaic and citra on my first sip than it is a citra and mosaic, if that makes sense. It's not that veggie verdant. There is that little bit of that.
That's mosaic.
Yeah, and I think that is just the mosaic, isn't it? I'd love to know what the ratio is there, which we talked about before, but I think it's heavier to mosaic.
I had a can of something the other day, can't quite remember what it was, and on the back it said what the ratio of the hops were.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Fantastic that was. It was sort of 40-60 split. Nobody has to put that on their cans, but it's really interesting information, isn't it?
I feel like perhaps for some people the interesting is in inverted quote marks.
Yeah,
but probably for the people listening to this, no.
For the nerdy anoraks like you and me, yeah, that's fascinating. Actually, probably most people couldn't care less, but it interests me. Here's an interesting one for you as well. Now, we talk about hops and how hops fade fast, right? The other day, I opened with Dan from Copper Beach 2 beers from Other Half Brewing in New York with a best before date of April 2021.
And what style of beers were they?
They called the first one an Imperial IPA. It was 9.6%, so nearly a tipper, really. And the other one was a Mosaic and Mochuica Pale.
Now, I would have expected they would have actually faded quite, maybe less so the Imperial, maybe. I think they'd be quite thin, like they would have lost a lot of their haze and their body.
The Imperial was very sweet. Whether it was sweet to start with or it got a little bit sweeter, I don't know. But it certainly tasted very, very boozy. The aroma was great as well. The other one, which was not so strong, that had lost some of its top aroma. And to taste as well, it had gone a little bit thin, like you say. But there was nothing wrong with them. They were both perfectly drinkable.
But the problem is whether that's possibly not how either beer was designed to be drunk. And that's always the risk, isn't it? I mean, I say it's the risk. It is a little bit of a problem confined to yourself, but you have beers that are so badly out of date.
Well, actually, these weren't mine. They were Dan's. We found them in his shed from when the brewery was in the shed. Ideally, you would drink them in date so you can taste the beer that the producers intended it to be. But what I'm saying is that just because you have a beer that's out of date doesn't mean you shouldn't drink it.
I agree with you that I think sometimes beer, especially the hoppy stuff, does get slapped with these like 2, 3 month, 4 month best befores, and it's probably not quite that. But at the same time, if the brewers have released it with that intention of maybe a 6-month shelf life, you can't then drink it out of date and have a go and go,
absolutely.
Nothing. Not that I'm saying you would.
No,
but
absolutely. I think that really would be a bit rich to say, oh, this is all right. I expect it to be better if you're drinking it way past its best. Yeah, that's unfair. I think I checked them in on Untapped and I'm not sure I even rated them, to be honest.
Just checking them off, which is fair enough.
Exactly. Now, I've nearly finished my first beer, which was Tuning Freak Out from Ground and Gibbon, and I have to say, I said it was a bit bitter at the end to start with. That bitterness has completely rounded off. So
nice.
It's changed quite a bit while we've been chatting.
Well, while we have been chatting as well, and I've been drinking Testing 1 too, I like this. It's so strange because if you'd have given me both those beers next to each other, I would have almost expected them to taste how the other one has tasted. Right. I would have thought Dingy from Deadweight was going to be probably a bit more bitter, a bit danker. And I would have thought, a Citra and a Mosaic, that's going to taste probably a bit of Citra juice, bit of Mosaic bitterness. And actually, it's more akin to having something down that... The comparison I would give for Escapist is this is a little bit like a verdant beer in the nose and also that taste. There's a little bit of dankness, which I don't expect from a Citra Mosaic combo, and a little bit of that sort of vegetal taste and smell. Not a bad thing. I don't mind it in moderation. It's not quite always for me. I do say about veggie verdant, but this isn't full veggie verdant, so I'm perfectly happy.
I'll tell you what is nice, actually, to have a Citra and Mosaic that doesn't quite taste like you expected it to, because many of them do, and then they all fall into that category of being, solid pales.
Steve very kindly sent 4 cans, so 2 of this. And then 2 of another one, which was the other beer he talked about, the collaboration with the Surf Shop. That's a bit stronger and a bit different. There's some different hops in there. I'm really interested to see what I've got out of those hops as well.
Excellent. One of the reasons we thought we'd do this feature is because you can't go onto social media at the moment without seeing that another brewery has closed down. It's a really tough time at the moment for breweries, so we just wanted to shine a light on some of these names we haven't heard of so much. Now, one of the features we also do on the podcast is The Brewer's Wife, which is with Sam, one half of the Copper Beach Brewing Company. And I had a little chat with her about the current state of affairs in the craft beer industry. And here's what we talked about.
Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
It's a brand new year, and we have with us Sam from Copper Beach. Happy New Year, Sam.
Happy New Year, everybody.
How's it going?
Yeah, really good, thank you.
Well, the last couple of times you've been on with your perspective of the industry from being a brewer's wife, you told us some funny stories about your husband, Dan. Well, this time it's a bit more serious because you can't help but have noticed on social media, every time you look on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, another brewery has sadly been lost from the scene. And, you know, we're probably up to somewhere around 100 breweries now that were lost since the start of 2022. I wonder, what's it like being married to somebody who's given up their job and invested everything financially and their time into a business, and then he sees so many similar businesses around him failing? That must be an utter nightmare.
It's one of those things that you can never truly know what's happened with any of these businesses.
Yep.
You never know what situation they're in, but looking at some of them on the surface, some of the bigger ones, and you just think, God, if it can happen to them.
Yeah.
And it is frightening because, like you say, so much has been invested in this, not just money, but time and you know, giving up a very well-paid, good job to do it full time. And you kind of want to be surrounded by positivity and you want to really feel like you can make it. And when you're someone like Dan who struggles with sort of self-belief anyway, and towards the end of 2022, like you said, it was like every day another one was going.
Yeah. And these are breweries, not inconsiderably sized breweries. Some very big breweries have fallen by the wayside or gone into administration. So you sort of see these big names going and you must think, oh, God.
Sometimes I think the bigger ones don't hit as much, actually, because when you're on such a scale, I think you've probably got a lot bigger equipment and a lot, you know, some of them had bars and things, didn't they? And
yeah.
So your revenue streams are probably slightly different to where we're at. But the smaller ones that are a similar size to you, that haven't quite, for whatever reason, managed to make it work, I think that probably hits a little bit closer to home because you can relate much more.
You can see yourselves in them.
In them, yeah, because I don't, you know, Dan's made it quite clear he doesn't ever really want to be like a huge brewery. He just wants to make a decent living wage, which obviously is more than it was when we sort of said that a couple of years ago with everything that's been going on. But it definitely gives an element of nervousness to the whole thing because you just think, why are they going under? And like I said, you'll never really know. So I think the best thing he did at the time, after, you know, sort of doomsday every day, was come off social media. And we talked about it in our episode where we discussed mental health. And I said at the time that if you suffer with your mental health, social media is probably one of the most dangerous places to spend your time because it can always feed into any sort of fears that you have quite considerably. So I think sometimes you just have to remove yourself from, you know, whatever it is that sets you off and concentrate and focus on what you're doing.
You know, if I put myself in Dan's shoes, it doesn't help to read about breweries going under every day. It's not going to do your confidence any good in what you're doing, is it?
No.
You don't need that information, really, do you?
And also, because people know that you're a brewer, they tend to direct that content to you. Oh, have you seen this? Or did you hear about such and such?
Yes, I'm guilty of doing that. Yes.
But it's only a natural thing to do, isn't it? Because when you share that in common or, you know, somebody knows that you're in that industry and, oh, did you know this brewery or did you know that brewery or they've gone under? And it's just a natural conversation, really. But it's been a scary time.
You go onto Twitter and such like and you see these lists of breweries that have gone under. Somebody asked the question, is there a list of new breweries?
Exactly that.
Or breweries who are really thriving in the current scene? And you don't see those lists.
Is anybody tracking that? Of course they're not. No one's looking at that.
We need to start a list.
Exactly, because I bet you, if you looked at the same time frame, how many new breweries have, come up?
Well, I did see a chart looking at the sort of past 5 years, and the trajectory during that time, year on year, is just growth. So I guess at some point there had to be a bit of a dip anyway, because that's what happens. You can't keep growing. Everything can't keep growing forever.
But if you look at every industry, businesses go under all the time, and there'll be so many different reasons as to why that is. So, yeah, it's a very sad fact of it that we've lost some really, really good ones, or what are perceived to be very, very good brewers that are making great beer, and that's a real shame. But there are so many enthusiastic brewers out there who are just starting their journey, and I think a lot of people who've been going for a while have been hit by COVID. Now that would have had devastating effects for a lot of businesses, and some of them maybe wouldn't quite recover. And then on top of that, you got thrown the energy prices, the ingredient prices went up. And if you're already on your knees, that is going to push you over the edge. So the ones who are coming into it now, they kind of got a better fighting chance, because they're coming in on that ground level where... Yeah,
new players to the market haven't had to experience COVID.
Yeah.
And that rise in energy prices. The prices are already where they are.
Yeah.
So people starting off, they've got a sounder base to start from, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So hopefully, it's sad that we've lost good brewers, but it will hopefully make way for some, really enthusiastic and great brewers to start their own businesses and get their beer out there to fill in the gaps. Do you think one of the contributing factors for some of them will be that in this industry, if we're talking about the consumers, tend to always be looking for something new?
Yes.
Yeah, I do, and it's some brewers have done it so wonderfully, where they've managed to capture people and keep them as continual customers. People keep going back for more, and then you get some that have a real rush, don't they? Have a real rise. Their name's everywhere, and then it peters out, and you don't hear them so much.
Exactly right. Yeah, you get these kind of breweries that have come onto the scene with such a hurrah, and everybody wants their beers. Then they go very, very quiet.
I mean, kind of, we're a bit guilty of that with one thing and another that went on. We came bounding in, and we had a really great trade in our local area, and then, we had a baby, and Dan moved into the unit, and everything slowed right down, and we had no news, and the social media dies off a little bit, and then you have to almost like a phoenix, you have to rise again and come back and capture people's attention again. But
consumers in this industry are massively fickle. There's no
Don't forget they're your listeners, Dave.
Yeah, well, they are, but I'm the same.
Oh, we all are. We all are, totally.
We always want that next new thing. And I think some brewers are really good at keeping on producing that next new thing to keep enticing people to come back.
Yeah, what's that magic formula?
Well,
no, I'm really asking. We need to know. No, I'm joking.
Well, I mean, it would be nice, wouldn't it? But one thing that Dan's going to be doing is more one-off brews, more experimental stuff, and I think that is something that keeps people coming back.
Yeah, that is true, actually. Yeah, because then you have got your staple things that people already enjoy, but then you're always trying to give them something.
You're catering
else.
For two different audiences then when you're doing that.
Oh well, maybe we've got the magic formula.
Maybe you have.
You never know.
Time will tell. So thanks a lot to Sam there. We sort of covered a bit of ground there with what's happening in the industry, and we'll continue to shine a light now on some breweries that we hadn't come across before. And my next one here is Brolly Brewing, and I love the artwork on this. I absolutely love it. It's sort of cartoony, bright colours. This beer is called Popsicle, which again is a New England pale ale, whereas the previous beer I had was a New England at 6.3%. This one is a New England IPA, and it's only 3.8%.
I would never normally think of a New England as being able to go in at 3.8%.
Well, normally, when I think New England, I always think it's going to be at least 5%.
Yeah.
That's what I have in my mind, but we will see. I mean, it looks very thick and fruity, doesn't it?
Yeah. No, it certainly looks the business.
Right, so this is Simcoe, Eldorado and Sabro, the dreaded Sabro.
I think what we were talking about earlier with Galaxy is probably fair to talk about with Sabro now, because I think a lot of brewers have worked out that Sabro is really good in moderation, not chuck-a-loading, because then it just dominates.
Yeah, and this certainly doesn't have a load chucked in. It's been dealt with very caringly.
So what does it taste of then? What do you get?
When I started my first beer, I said there was a bit of a bitter edge to it. There's no bitterness whatsoever here. This is completely rounded. A lot of fruit there at the front. You'd think actually that at 3.8% it might not taste so much, but it is very fruity and very, very drinkable.
And full enough that you wouldn't think, because obviously 3.8%, you're in session pale and you're almost getting towards table beer, but it's still got that fullness of a New England.
If you said to me this was a table beer, I wouldn't say, oh no, it's not a table beer, it's a New England. It could well be a table beer.
Okay.
But a good table beer, one with a lot going on, not just a watery yellow liquid table beer. This is a good beer, like it.
And do they have a sort of full range? What have we got from Brolly?
Brolly have got all sorts of stuff from this to barrel aged imperial stouts right across the board. In fact, I have got a bottle of one of the stouts. I did toy with opening that, but I thought no, we'll keep that a bit. Let's go with a not so strong beer. Right, let's hand over to Brolly to find out a bit more about them.
Hello, Daves. It's Brooke here at Brolly Brewing. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Just wanted to talk to you a bit about Brolly then. We've been going since August 2017. And we started up as a little one-barrel brewery. Holly kicked me out of the kitchen. That was my wife. So it's Brooke and Holly running the brewery. Brooke and Holly, Brolly. She kicked me out the kitchen for ruining our kitchen services. And luckily, a friend of ours said, we've got an old chicken coop if you fancy brewing in there. And I was like, brilliant. So I converted that into a little brewery. Managed to nab a one-barrel kit from somewhere local. I think it was Crawley, actually. And then started brewing. And then, of all people, Jodie Kidd got in touch with me and said she was opening a pub locally to the brewery and said she wanted us to supply that. And that really kick-started the brewing and got us known locally. And from then, we've gone from strength to strength, really. The pandemic, while, pretty terrible for all of us, was very good for Brolly in the fact that I got furloughed from the day job and then started delivering cask beer around Sussex for nearly a year. And every Friday, we really built up a following, and I think I was delivering about 180 3-pint growlers every Friday around Sussex. And I'd tap 6 casks at 3 a.m. I'd tap them and pour them immediately. So they were very nice and lively in the growlers. And then, it'd take about 5 hours to pour them all out, and then about 10 hours to deliver. So it's an incredibly long day, but it was really satisfying. And, while I was delivering, we'd get the Brolly customers to leave out food, and we'd then collect for the local food bank. I did that for, a good year. It was very profitable for us. And we bought a new kit with the profits, actually, a 2.5 barrel kit. Which meant we were then brewing about 400 litres of beer, so that's about 10 casks. Since then, obviously, I'm back doing the day job, so I'm spread pretty thin. We've also just done a crowdfunder for the brewery, and we're moving it from beautiful Whisper Green to the lovely Horsham where we live, and that's going to save me about 7 hours in driving a week, let alone other things. So we're really pleased to be moving it to where we live. We've got lots of Brolly fans here, and a good reputation to open a lovely tap room with 16 keg lines and 6 cask lines. Cask beer is something I've always been an absolute fan of. It's the best form of beer, in my opinion, if it's done right. And it's not always done right. That's the thing. So we really want to showcase cask at Brolly, and modern cask as well as traditional cask. So that's something to look out for if you're ever visiting. The crowdfunder went really well. We raised about 20 grand, and I've raised another 40 in private equity from friends and family. And that should be enough to make the jump over. It's basically like building another brewery. It's quite difficult. It's quite stressful. Things go very slowly, and I'm up to my eyeballs in red tape at the moment. Still negotiating a lease that we started negotiating in October. That shows you how slow things can go. If it was all just about brewing beer, it'd be a lot easier, because brewing beer's just a wonderful thing to do. It's just everything else associated with the brewery is hard. And as you know, breweries and pubs are having a really tough time of it at the moment. So it's quite a difficult environment to make the move, but I think once we're here, we'll do really well. So I think you've been drinking Popsicle, haven't you? So that's a lovely New England pale ale that's been brewed for a couple of years at Brolly. That's got Simcoe Eldorado and a lovely Sabro hop in it. When it's fresh, I get sort of freshly squeezed orange juice is what I get from it. So it's a proper juicy pale ale. A lot of people get pineapple as well. Some people say coconut. But it's a lovely beer, only 3.8%, so you can drink a lot of it. And that's the thing about the beers I brew. The majority tend to be around 4.5 between 3.5 to 4.5. If I like a beer, I want to drink lots of it. I don't want to have just one glass. I want to have 4. So yeah, that's the way it's always been for me. I like to put lots of body in beers like Popsicle, for example. If it's a hazy pale or an IPA, then it may be low alcohol or lower alcohol, but I want it to have all the attributes of something that a bigger beer has. So that's what you'll find with our beers. They're very flavoursome and full-bodied. Also do a lot of barrel aging. I love big dark beers as well. Yeah, but Holly's recently told me to stop making them because they don't sell as fast. But my God, I've actually got an Imperial Stout in the tank at the moment that's 10% that I've not told her about. But anyway, thanks ever so much for having me on. And I do hope to get to meet you guys and keep doing a great job with the podcast. I really enjoy listening to it. All the best. See ya. Bye.
Right, so we've both now had 2 beers each. And I tell you what, Dave, 4 beers. I think we've enjoyed every one of them.
4 hits, I would say.
And until recently, we hadn't heard of these guys. Any of them.
No, it's been driving me wild because I did a little bit of my ordering, and also, Amber were very kindly sent me their beers, I think, before Christmas. So I've had all these beers sat in my fridge, which, out of respect for doing what we wanted to do, I haven't had any. And probably hand brew have been the hardest because they were also the most generous. I'm quite happy to say that hand brew very nicely sent me 12 beers and 2 glasses, which I really didn't expect. Yeah, exactly. I thought that was incredibly good of them. They filled a bit of one of my fridges up, and they've just sat there taunting me for weeks now. So I've been dying to
feel
get
your
into
pain.
them. Exactly.
Because we're so dedicated to the cause, what happens is when we do these features, we might have a few beers from the brewery, but we won't touch them until we do the feature. So now we've had our beers from these breweries, we can go mad on what else is in the fridge from these breweries and drink them at last. I've had the same thing. I've got like half a dozen or a dozen cans from Brolly in the fridge. In fact, also from my third brewery as well. But now, once we've had them, we can let rip and drink them at last. Yeah, what we're sort of planning on doing is sort of keeping an eye on the progress from these breweries and hopefully getting some of them on to chat at greater length a bit further down the line. So listen out for that.
All of these breweries were recommended to us by people who responded to the social media post on Instagram. And please do keep sending them in, because even if we're not doing them all at once, we'll do them, like we can pick them up and do them in future episodes. For example, Bayonet were mentioned. Now, ironically, I didn't realise at the time, I am going away with Katie and the dog at the end of March for a few days near Northallerton. Didn't realise Bayonet were in Northallerton until I booked it. So hopefully we might be able to see him, just have a chat and a beer, or at worst he's going to direct me to where the beers are on tap. So it's great in that sense because I found another brewery, another connection made, more people to talk to, more people to enjoy beer with. So that's great.
So Hand Brew, that's your next one then, Dave?
Yes. So they have a beer called Otto, and our dog is called Otto, and Otto is asleep on the floor behind me, which is very unusual because he's usually not in here when we record, so it's almost like he knows.
I tell you what, though, he's not snoring, and I've heard that dog snore many a time.
Yeah, he does snore.
Me and Dave used to work with each other, and on many a video call, I could hear Otto snoring in the background.
Yeah, that was either when he was in his bed in front of me or on the sofa next to me snoring his head off.
So obviously Otto is very loved. We want a beer here that lives up to his name.
Before I get into it, actually, because Jack and Kate from the brewery will talk you through what Otto and also themselves are about. So we'll hear from them first, and then we'll come back to the beer.
Hello, my name's Jack Tavray. I'm the managing director and one of the co-founders of the Hand Brewing Company.
I'm Kate Hyde, and I'm the head brewer here at the Hand Brewing Company.
Hand Brew Co. is an independent brewery. We're based down on the south coast of the UK. We've got a brew pub in Brighton and a production brewery in Worthing, with a tap room on site, as well as a pub in central Worthing as well. We started the brewery back in 2016 at the Hand in Hand brew pub in Brighton. It was started after I got back from studying for a diploma in brewing in the UK, and I was looking for a job in the industry, and the brewery in the Hand in Hand happened to be empty at the time. It was an existing brewery already, and so I decided to start up the brewing there along with the landlord and landlady of the pub, who are the 2 other co-founders of the brewery. The Hand in Hand is a really old tower brewery, so it spans 4 floors of the building. It's a very old way of brewing in the UK. It's a bit mad, and there's lots of running up and down stairs, but it's a beautiful little site. The brewery's about a 5-barrel brewery, so we make around 800 litres a time. Back when I started in 2016, it was all very basic, and over the course of about 3.5-4 years, I spent some time upgrading the kit. We installed some new fermenters a couple of times, because when we started, we only had open square fermenters like they do up in some of the Yorkshire breweries of old. So we couldn't produce any keg, we could only produce casks. So we installed some proper pressurized fermenters twice by cutting open the floor of the pub and lowering new tanks in. We did that twice, and that was the kind of pub cellar maxed out for space. We started making more and more beer and eventually couldn't keep up with demand for our production at the Hand in Hand brew pub, so we started cuckoo brewing at another local brewery. We did that for a bit before finally expanding to a new big custom production site in Worthing, which is where we do most of our production now. All of our core beers are made there. We still brew at the Hand in Hand, making our special ranges and limited releases. We now have 3 people in the production site who are here most of the time. They also do brew at the Hand in Hand a little bit. We've got a head brewer and 2 brewers on site who make everything that we produce now. And I think Kate's going to talk a little bit about our beers and about one of our core range beers called Otto, which is a dry stout.
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. I think probably like at the heart of our range of beers, like any brewery really, there's a core range, and the genesis, as Jack explained, of this brewery is very much from being inside a pub. A brew day typically would be kind of dragging malt sacks out past people drinking pints of the beer that you're brewing, and that's a very humbling experience for a brewer, but it's also something that sort of really informed the approach to developing that core range, this spirit of community, this idea that beer is really a social glue that brings people together and helps the stories flow is very much at the heart of what we do, particularly with the core range. We have a lot of fun with specials, but with our core range of 4 or 5 very drinkable beers, it's about pub drinking and those moments that you find in the pub and just reaching for another pint of the same thing. And I mean, obviously we've done our own spin on everything. All of our beers are unique to us, but when it came to doing a stout, there's a kind of there's a very iconic stout in most pubs. Oops. There's a very iconic stout that's kind of missing that most pubs don't consider themselves a pub if they don't have, and that's obviously Guinness. And so developing Otto, which is our approach to Guinness, was I guess really essential. Like, can you be a pub without a nitro stout? Can you be a brewery without a nitro stout? So yeah, it's been a labour of love over those 6 years, kind of tweaking that recipe and trying to get it as close as possible to, I guess, a classic, but also with a really individual spin on it. And we've gone for a nitro carb on Otto, obviously, because it's silky and beautiful and delicious, and we like it. But I think probably what makes Otto stand out, for me personally, is very much this kind of slightly richer, slightly smokier quality that I think we've kind of brought out through a particular blend of the dark malts that we've used. It's got its fan club, definitely.
Well, thanks a lot there to Jack and Kate from Hand Brew Co. They're really interesting to hear all about them. What's the beer like? Dave's just poured it out.
This is their interpretation of doing Guinness. So they've got a nitro stout, 4%, dry stout. That's come out brilliantly. It wasn't a brilliant pour from myself for a nitro. I was a little bit concerned because it doesn't actually sort of say nitro on the can. So I was a bit worried whether I should give it the nitro pour. So I didn't, but it's still come out brilliantly. Lovely and dark, great head.
So for those who might not know, what's going on with the nitro beer?
So the nitro is from the nitrogen, which in theory, and it does work actually, it gives a very lively yet very creamy pour. So you can pour it. You can essentially tip the can upside down. If you've got a pint glass and it's say a 440 or 500ml can, you should be able to pour it in there straight away. It comes up. It doesn't overflow or anything. Instead you get a lovely creamy head, and it sort of does that bit in the middle where the bubbles are going up and down a bit, and the head all sorting itself out, a bit like Guinness.
What you're saying is that even I should be able to pour it and not make a dog's dinner of it.
In theory, yeah. And that's poured brilliantly, and the head's really hanging around. Sometimes
it does look very good, that does.
Other nitros can sort of dissipate a bit on the head, but this one doesn't. And they did say it has almost a smokiness, which, I am a sucker for the smoke, and it comes through.
You get
smells smoky. Yeah, smells smoky.
This is ticking a lot of boxes for you at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So it's not Guinness. But they did say it's dry stout. It's got a bit more to it. It's their variation, their take on it. Oh, that is good. That is good. That is a dry stout. And I like a dry stout. So what you get is it's a bit roasty to start. It is full, but it's not full luxurious. It's just sort of, it's decently rounded, I would say. It's not sort of creamy. It wouldn't be a creamy stout in that sense. When you could have a Guinness or say a Caffrey's where it's got that bit more creaminess. There's not that. Instead, what you get is a bit of roastiness, a bit of coffee, but again, it's not that whole coffee taste. And then it's a little bit dry and a little bit smoky. The dryness would overtake smokiness.
It sounds like there's
more on the nose.
It sounds like there's a lot of things working in harmony here rather than one flavour or taste or smell coming across too much.
Yeah, and also when you haven't then had a sip, you can still taste it in your mouth. It lingers.
Nice.
I would say that's quite Irish traditional, because when I think of a dry stout, and I might be wrong, I think of Irish traditional. So perhaps what Guinness used to be, or the Guinness original.
Okay. This sounds like a beer you could find in a little backstreet pub in Dublin somewhere. And it would sort of be a trip down memory lane, that type of beer.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. That's a great way to put it. Now, obviously, these guys are based down near Brighton, in Worthing. But if you went to some part of Ireland and you went in this, like you say, some remote pub and they had a beer, and you'd be like, come back from your holiday, and, we found this one beer. It was incredible. It's like that. It's really, really well done. Bet it's even better on cask and keg as well. I reckon it lends itself to pulling more flavours out of.
Yeah, I bet on cask that's pretty awesome.
Big hit. Rounds off the three really well because it's a stout. So I've sort of gone light to dark, but all three for me. Absolute hits, which I'm really pleased about. Brilliant. So hopefully you can bring us home with your final beer.
Well, I've just about finished Popsicle from Brodie Brewing, which was great at the start, and I've just finished it. And it's great at the end. That really was good. And it held its flavour all throughout, even though it's less than 4%. So plaudits there for that, because not all beers that aren't too strong can manage to pull that off. Right, my third and final beer is from Missing Link Brewing. And before I open it, let's pass over to Jeremy from the brewery to tell you all about them and this beer.
Hi, my name's Jeremy Cook. I'm the head brewer and founder of Missing Link Brewing. We set up Missing Link Brewing about 7 years ago in the Old Dairy, which is part of the farm that we're based on, which is midway between Haywards Heath and East Grinstead, in the middle of mid-Sussex. We originally started off with a small Speidel 50-litre Braumeister to trial some beers to see that we'd actually enjoy what we were doing and see if the beer actually tasted any good. From there, in 2017, we decided to take the plunge and ordered a 500-litre Braumeister kit along with 15 500-litre uni tanks and started making beer. Originally, the idea of the name of Missing Link Brewing was that it was a middle point for brewers that wanted to progress into the brewing industry but didn't have the cash flow or equipment to set up on their own. Hence, we were the missing link for these brewers to progress to market. It all went really, really well. We had all the tanks full. We were doing contract brewing and also had some resident brewers that were setting up their own breweries for about 2 years. And then we decided that it was time that we launched our own beers. And so in 2019, we actually came out with our own range. We realised very quickly that the kit that we had ordered, although brilliant and made great beer, we realised that it just wasn't fast enough for us and wasn't big enough volumes. So we took a trip to the States, met up with the guys from SS Brewtech, and talked about getting a steam-powered brew house, which is a 3-vessel system. And we were lucky enough that we managed to purchase the one and only one that they had outside of the States. Along with the brew house, we ordered quite a few uni tanks. We're now up to 17, as well as bright tanks, and also decided to take the plunge into getting our own canning line after the issues that we found were happening with contract canning. Our original brews that we did were the classics, an American Pale Ale, a IPA, a West Coast one, a Pilsner, and we also started doing a cider from apples that we have on the farm. We then started making New England style beers and haven't really looked back. One of the things that we decided to add late in 2019 was a centrifuge, as this then ensured that we had consistency of product going into market, especially as that we were putting about 70% of our beers into cans and only about 30% into kegs. The New England craze has caught on massively, and we now find that we're doing about 70% of our beers in the hazy style, which we enjoy because it's such a fun style to play with, the diversity of flavours and aromas that we get out of the different hops, the amazing New Zealand and American hops that we have access to. I am often asked which is my favourite beer, and I can honestly say probably the last beer that I brewed. But if I was going to go for a particular favourite, it would be our Baboon, which is our winter dipper, which we just launched a couple of weeks ago. It's an 8% double IPA with the biggest dry hop that we do, which is 20 grams per litre, of Galaxy, Citra and Simcoe. And it's full of all the flavours and aromas that you expect from a big, juicy New England, of passion fruit, apricot, very citrusy, and very tropical. It's got, originally when it launches, it's got a bit of hop bite from its freshness in can, but that sort of levels off a little bit after 2 or 3 weeks and sort of develops into a lovely, fresh, juicy beer. The beer that you guys are trying is our Mandrill Berry Goes, which is a sour that we bring out every summer and change up the actual fruits that we use depending on what fruits are available at the time. So we're always using something that's really fresh. This version has got raspberries, strawberries and blackberries at around 15% of the actual whole beer. And we decided that we didn't want to go for something that was overly sour. We just wanted a nice, gentle sourness to give a bit of variety, as a lot of our customers that we have into our tap room are not actual heavy beer drinkers or not into their dippers and that, and it's an awesome crossover beer. We're also really lucky to have an awesome tap room on site. We have 10 taps of fresh beer always on the go, as well as a great selection of local craft spirits. We do food on the weekends. We do a Sunday roast club, which has become famous around here, that's booked up at least 3 to 4 months in advance, as well as doing all sorts of other pop-ups. In the summer, we have a massive beer field, which holds up to 1,000 people. We have a bar out there, which has 8 beers on tap, which is a perfect way to enjoy the summer evenings. We've also just started doing brewery tours for our customers, as a lot of them keep asking, like, they want to come and have a look around the brewery. So we decided it was time to show everybody where the magic happens. And keep an eye on what we're up to, because we've got some exciting plans for the summer coming up. And we can't wait to have our beer field back open. And if you're ever in this neck of the woods, you'll be always welcomed into the tap room and come and try our beers, have a look round. I'm always about, or someone's around to answer any questions. So looking forward to seeing you.
Right, so what I have got here, and I'm very excited about this one, because this is a 4.2% Berry Goes.
Oh, okay. I was surprised that we hadn't seen you have a sour beer.
Well, here it is.
So far.
Here it comes. Yeah, Mandrill it's called, and this will bring us the flavours of raspberry, look at that, strawberry and blackberry. Now, interestingly enough, with a lot of sours, you don't often get to find out what hops are in them. They don't often publish that information if you think about it, but this is Chinook in here.
Okay. Any lactose?
No lactose. Ooh, that's nice. Oh my goodness. Strawberry straight off, yes. Well, I'll tell you what is in here. There is a hint of coriander as well, it says on the can. And then pink Himalayan salt for that salty hit you get with the Goes. And that's excellent, really soft. And I think sometimes with Goes, people are a bit scared of the saltiness. They think, oh, I don't want any salt in my beer. But no, that really tops this beer up perfectly. Let's see if I can get the raspberry and the blackberry as well.
I think with that salt, that is actually something that personally I don't know that I want it. But then I will have it. And so think, oh, okay, that was.
Well, you've kind of got the sweetness and the tartness of the berries up front, and then as you finish, that little salty hit then makes you want to go back and repeat the dose and have a bit more.
Exactly.
Yeah, the strawberry is the overwhelming one for me. Little bit of blackberry behind it. Lovely sort of pale pink colour. Really nice. Not a artificial colour in any way. I like that a lot. That's lovely.
And they've obviously got quite a full range of styles as well. There's something for everyone on their website.
Absolutely. They've got I can't wait to get stuck into all the other beers from these guys now. Looks like we've had 6 beers that we've really, really enjoyed. I have to say that Dave is not the easiest customer to please a lot of the time, are you? You know what you like, you know what you don't like, and if we go out for a beer, you're quite happy to say I don't like this, but you've enjoyed all of those.
I have, and that is genuine. It's not the same, but last weekend I went out with friends and there was a Daya Tap Takeover. Now, I like Daya, you like Daya. We were talking about Daya's Tap Room on the previous episode.
We were.
And I think I had about 4 or 5, because after about the 4th or 5th, I was Daya'd out because they all started to taste a bit similar. And I think Daya got some massive hits, but I think in their range of their 4s and their 5% beers, I think you can just pick one and you probably, it's always going to be good, but it isn't necessarily going to be different. And that's sort of a bit of a thing that bugs me when beers are just okay. Like there's nothing wrong with them, but they're not doing anything different. Each of those beers tonight that I've had have done something a little bit different. That will resonate with me. I can still remember Dinghy because it made me think differently about Galaxy. Testing 1-2 from Escapist, that was definitely not what I expected from Citra Mosaic, and in a good way. And then this dry stout from Hambrew is great. It is traditional in the sense that it's a dry stout, but at the same time, it's not a style that gets done that much, so it stands out. So, yeah, I'm not an easy customer to please, but on this occasion, I'm a very happy customer.
Excellent. Well, me too as well. 2 really quite different New England IPAs for me, Growden Gibbon and Brody Brewing, then topping it off there with a Goes, which is one of my favourite styles of beer, from Missing Link. 6 different breweries, 6 quite different beers, and 6 hits. So, what's going to happen on the next episode? Well, we have got coming up for you a really fascinating chat with Anthony from Twisted Wheel in Warrington. Now, those of you who follow your social media would have seen that a few months ago, Twisted Wheel actually announced their closure, and that was it. They were gone from the scene. But Anthony, who was one part of Twisted Wheel, has brought them back under his own guidance, and he's started the brewery again, and he's going to be on to talk to us about what's going on. What we'd like to do, though, is put your questions to him. So if you've got any questions you'd like to ask Anthony, let us know, and we will put your questions to him and give you a shout out on the next episode as well. And we'll be putting this up on the socials as well. So if you see us asking for questions for Twisted Wheel, respond and we'll put your questions to him, whatever you want to know. This is a brewery that had been going really well and then disappeared off the scene, and he's back. So there's lots of talking points, and if you have anything you want to know, let us know. We'll pass it on.
It's great to see that Twisted Wheel has come back, because I've not been exposed to masses of their beer, but the one that stands out for me is a beer called Speed Wobble.
Speed Wobble. Now, Speed Wobble was one of the beers we had on your stag night in Ipswich.
Exactly, and it made its way all the way down from there, didn't it? And it was brilliant, and it was so good that myself and a couple of friends ended up getting one of my other friends who really enjoyed his Speed Wobble that night, another 24 cans of it. Fascinating to find out the journey, which I can't imagine has been that easy, but it's also great to see that Twisted Wheel has come back. I'm really looking forward to chatting to Anthony because, as you say, it's going to be a very different conversation to what we normally have.
That will be available in the next few weeks, so check your socials, check your Spotify and your Apple Podcasts for when that's released. We're going to go and finish off the leftovers from these beers we've been sampling tonight, and we'll speak to you soon.
Daftaboutcraft. Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1. Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.